1. We are live.
So before I do anything, I'm going to correct a lot of the mistakes I've made and say, please subscribe. Little red button. We need to get to 100. I always say it at the end. We're saying it at the beginning. So subscribe below, please. Hunt for success. Ben, Drew, cheers.
Sir, Cody.
It only took us 4 reschedules to make this happen.
Ryan,
Absolutely.
Ryan, cheers.
down here with my water. We'd like to thank Roger Wendell for letting us use the Wendell Animal Museum of Conservation. It's an amazing location, and without his support here, this room isn't possible.
Well, and I think Drew, besides us, is the only hunter that's been on so far, right?
Emery. Is
Oh,
the
Emery,
hunter.
yeah, second. Sorry. So how you guys doing?
Good. Outstanding.
I've been excited for this for a couple of reasons. One, we're good friends
Yeah.
and drinking and working buddies, and I've learned a lot. This show's obviously called The Hunt for Success, which gives us the opportunity to combine the two things we love the most, which is hunting and fishing, and personal development, business development, success, and gives us time to sit down with people like yourselves and kind of learn from each other and share that with everybody else.
And who do we got here today?
We got Ben Young and Drew Shaffer.
Ben and Drew.
What's cool about Ben and Drew, and I'll let you guys talk about it a little bit, but you both work in the same industry, which is long-term care, which I want to know, did you choose that field because you knew the baby boomers are coming and it was going to blow up and it was going to be a good field to be in, or did you just end up there? Like for us, if you went to a seminar and they said, raise your hands if you planned on being in the mortgage business, nobody would raise their hands, right?
I think that did have a big part in it. I mean, for me personally, my family was involved in the industry, and so that was kind of my knowing them and their success and what it kind of meant to them, I think had a big part in me wanting to be part of the industry, but also looking at the baby boomers retiring and knowing that it was just going to be a continual growing industry was something that really got me interested in it for sure.
Right. I went to school at OSU thinking that I was going to get into healthcare administration of some variety. I ended up volunteering at a nursing home in Corvallis and thinking that was just going to be kind of a dip my toe into the pool and find out what was going on. And I kind of found like some of the coolest people that were really dedicated to the job that they do, and they come to work every day feeling really inspired by their work, like it's just what drives them, and who doesn't want to be part of that action? So I kind of got swept up into it, and they offered me an AIT, which is an administrator in training, which is part of the state and federal licensing, and I breezed through that, and next thing you know, I was a licensed idiot with a bachelor's degree and no experience.
And administrator, ATI, is that what you called it?
AIT, yeah.
AIT? That you're in charge, you're responsible for the whole facility.
Right. Ultimately, it moves you immediately to the top, and you are like the general manager for like.
So I did an AIT program as well with our company, and AIT stands for Administrator in Training. So I mean, I don't know how, I'm guessing Ben's was similar, but you're typically working under the executive director or administrator of that community and kind of learning all the ins and outs of the building from that perspective as kind of the trainee of the director.
Yep.
Well, you guys look like geniuses. Anybody that got in that industry kind of is a genius because it's really blowing up, right? Management styles is a big topic, right?
Sure.
And I've known Ben for a long time, and Drew and I just met this last year. And would you guys agree that you guys have two different management styles?
I don't know. Ben and I have been really good friends for a number of years now and worked really closely with each other. But we've never had the opportunity to really work hand in hand in the industry together, and I think that's probably what it would take to learn each other's management style. But I would venture to say that, over the years of working in long-term care, I've probably had the opportunity to work with 6 or 7 different administrators or executive directors in assisted living communities, and I don't think any one of them had the same management style I think they all varied a little bit differently, but
Yeah.
so I can't speak to Ben's management style, but I can tell you that the way I manage and from being in and out of Ben's buildings, that we're both very much on the floor a lot. We're not in our offices a ton, and I see that and there's people refer to that management style as managing with your feet, and I think that from what I've seen in Ben's building, he certainly does that, and I do that as well.
In the conversations we get caught up in, because we get, actually, it's a lot of time to sit there and talk about work when we do hang out. It's one of the first conversations that come out and how things are going, because it's so involved, like you're just so invested in it. It's really a huge part of your life. Because
Well, and you guys are, not to interrupt, but you guys are involved in the same community. So I was eavesdropping as you guys were eating pizza.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you guys are dealing with the same networking pool, the same community.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the similarity there too, right?
Right.
Yep.
And in the time that we talk, I think that we have similar and different management styles. Everybody's going to be unique in their style, just because I think in our industry, it's going to be a lot about your personality and how people appeal to you. It's a feeling industry. There's no question. I'm not just saying this like you were working with caregivers. I mean, think of that really literally. These are people who could make the same money slinging hash somewhere, and
Hash
punch a
browns
clock.
or
Huh?
hash browns or like hash
Well,
ranch or-
nowadays it's a lot of different hash, but I think but the hash, yeah, they could be working at Starbucks, they could be doing something, but for reasons specific to that person, they chose an industry that they want to like help people and do that different kind of thing, and so their appeal to the job has a lot to do with the culture of the building where they are. I mean, there are assisted livings and there are senior communities, but and I'm not just plugging this, but like your two centers that you're over really honestly are hands down two of the best in town, the two best in town. I had my own family there. And it's like people buy into Drew, you know what I mean? And that's what will bring them back. And so he and I will show up on different shifts, and the things that you say to encourage people and all that kind of stuff. We really have a similar style in that, like, we want to encourage the people who are there to do the right thing, to stick around and to feel validated by that. There's a huge business side of it, obviously, but 50% or greater is the people side, and that's keeping them around and keeping them motivated to do the job they do, because it is a job that requires you to give and give and give, and that's got to come from somewhere.
Well, and for the people that don't understand long-term care, is from the CNAs to your position.
You're right.
It takes a certain type of personality, because your clients or patients or customers, whatever you guys call them, they're probably in one of the worst positions they've been in their whole life.
Yeah,
Whether it's recovering from a major surgery or major accident or at the end of their life, correct?
Right. Or having to sell their house and downsize and live in a community where they can get the care they need.
It's a huge shift. Like, all of a sudden, these folks that, whether it was a slow process to the hospital or if it was like a traumatic event, they're all of a sudden in the hospital and life's on its ear. And then instead of just going home like you thought you would after the hospital, they're going to a post-acute center. And so they're like, how much longer? And then they're wondering, what's life going to be like after I get out of there? And it all really depends on how I'm able to function. You know what I mean? Like, am I going to be able to get myself off the bed, or am I going to have somebody else? And that's going to determine how my life goes on from there. And the trick of the day is always, for me, not seeing it to be so routine. Like, I see it day in and day out. I see these patients coming in with these deficits, and they get better and they go home. But it is really such a unique event, and like chapter in somebody's life, and like you just can't treat it like business as usual. When they sit in your office, like, they are there to kind of go over some details that are going to determine the course of the rest of their life,
Yeah.
which is just taking a right turn, left turn, whatever else. And it's you have to check yourself all the time.
There's that saying that I'm going to butcher it, but carpenter's house is always falling apart, right? So you mentioned, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but you mentioned that you had one of your family members
Sure.
in Drew's facility.
Absolutely, my mom.
So did that change your perspective? I mean, what was that like? Because it's easy to lose perspective, right? Just like Ryan and I both do mortgages, and then It's funny, when I went to go do my own mortgage, I was like, how do I qualify?
Right.
But I qualify people every day.
Same. We both went through like a refinance at almost the same time, and we talk about this a lot with our team. You know, every person is a new, unique situation, and you have to treat everybody like red carpet treatment.
Yeah.
And you can't take it for granted. And like every day is a new day, and just like you said, like everybody, whether they're coming into your care facility or they're getting a mortgage, like this is brand new to them, and they're trying to figure things out. So really slowing down and taking the time to make sure that their needs and wants and concerns and all that, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
That it's all met, and that you're not just rushing through it to just get through it.
Yeah, right. Check the boxes. Exactly.
So what was it like having your own family member need services at a long-term care, but having it be at Drew's facility?
I think significantly easier for me than it would be for the average person, in the fact that I knew how to navigate it, and I had a friend in the business. Like, I knew his center, and so I was really happy about. I was really relieved. I'm gonna say happy, yay, but like honestly, because of the terms under which my mother had to be admitted, but like it was a tremendous relief to have somebody that I knew in there. But to see the Drew and his team at work, I have to say that more than sold it for me. What it could do for people to have that extra mile. I mean, there's some folk that extra effort and things, and like Drew and his team gave my mom extra time. They were treating her like she is somebody special. She felt like really relieved and appreciated. It came back on me a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so glad because my son, is in this business, and this has happened to be something that I'm going to have to need now. And I can imagine what it was like for other folks that didn't have that same kind of but they get that same kind of service, how they feel because they're lost, and so I know for a fact that's how they operate. But imagine going to a place where they have a lot of turnover. You know what I mean? It's hard. There's a lot of turnover in our industry. So there are people coming in, and you don't really know what their motivation is to be in there, but they come in, and then to be kind of moved along through it and rushed through it could be just a really distressing experience, and it wasn't like that for me. So what was it like as a son? I just say is like, I was just really glad where I never have that conversation at, like you guys could talk at a party or at a function. People have bought homes, they're all been through this stuff, and so there's some sort of relation. When I go to a function, people don't really understand our post-acute care. They know hospital and clinic, and that's about it. Yeah. So there's not a lot of familiarity with it, but I was really I lost that thought, but they're really grateful for just being able to navigate that as well as I did.
Just to piggyback on there real quick, and so I guess so people that are watching would know, they might be wondering why Ben's mom didn't live in his community. We're in two separate
Good point.
two separate buildings. So Ben does he does post-acute and skilled nursing. He's a clinical skilled nursing facility administrator, and I'm in the assisted living side of things. So they do a lot of rehab clinical stuff where we do kind of the more long-term assisted living type of stuff.
So,
but yeah, no. So if you don't mind, I'll speak to. I mean, for me, it was big. Ben was at that point in time. Ben was.
I'm just going to cut in really quick here.
Oh, sure.
Because what you went through, everybody has to go through twice, but only twice in their life, right? Losing a parent.
typically.
Yeah, I guess there could be other situations, but for most people, it's two people. And so, I just wanted to throw that out there. You're going through something that it's easy to lose perspective, but you're dealing with people in your communities that are dealing with something, most of them for the first time. I don't know where I was going with that, but sorry to interrupt.
Actually, that's true. It's Greek to folks, but I'll let you jump in, let you finish what you were thinking.
Oh, I was just saying, I think one of the things that it was obviously a huge, it was a pleasure for us, obviously, to be able to care for Ben's mom, but it was also a huge, reward, I guess, in a sense, just in that Ben would choose our community. There's several communities that are in the area that we work with, and And one of the things I think that Ben and I both really do a good job of, and one of the things that's really important to us, is we don't go to our jobs and treat it like it's just a 9 to 5 clock in and out job.
No.
It's really important to us that we both have the best reputations in the community. We want to build those. We work really hard at building those relationships out in the community. Ben and I are more or less partners in a sense, because we refer people back and forth to each other. And similar to Ben sending his mom to me, I've sent several of my grandparents, at least 2 or 3 of my grandparents or my wife's
Family, right?
family and referred them to his community, just because of the quality of care and the quality of therapy that they provide there, and it's well known in the community. So it was, and that I think that's one thing from a management style that we really do have in common, is that we care and put a lot of time and effort into making sure that we provide the quality care. The word of mouth is really good about our buildings, but we're also out there building those relationships and making it, because a lot of it, especially, when you come down to caring for someone's life, it comes down to trust. That's the biggest thing. People want to make sure that they entrust in you to provide that quality care.
It's a huge emotional sell.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I have two of my grandparents currently live at one of my buildings. So, yeah.
Well, my wife's great-grandfather was at your facility.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think.
How do we do?
Pretty good.
You didn't edit?
He thinks.
He thinks? No, you're
No,
pretty good.
very good. What's cool about your industry is that you have business development and personal development, right? Which Ryan and I are really into. That's the whole reason we have this podcast. But there's 2 totally different aspects that you can relate both of those things to in your industry, because it's everything you just talked about, right?
Yeah,
Being able to relate to people, being able to hire the right people that are going to serve the patients to the level that you both expect, having gone through it personally.
Sure.
But at the same time, you're running a business,
Right.
So I wanted to ask you this, Ben, and don't take this the wrong way,
All right.
but it doesn't seem like personal development is something you're interested in, which is okay, because not everyone is. We have successful people on here that aren't into personal development. But I just wanted to know what I mean, is it a priority to you? Is it something you work with or work on personally, or do you feel like that doesn't motivate you in the right way?
Why don't you help me by defining, kind of summarizing what you think personal development is? That'll help me a little bit. Maybe that'll help me answer the question a little bit better.
And so about 5 years ago, well, let me back up even further. In our industry, there's a lot of opportunities to go out and get coaching, go to seminars, business development, personal development, how to time block, how to stay motivated, how to do self-affirmations, how to grow your business, how to relate to your client. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Right.
And there's a good percentage of people in our industry, a good percentage of really, really successful people in our industry that don't go to any of those.
Right.
Okay.
And you were one of those.
And I was one of them. Our boss was trying to get me to go to this annual one that he was a big believer in. And for 3 or 4 years, I said, no. And then he cornered me and said, I really want you to go. So I went, and it opened my eyes to personal development. I wasn't going to get rah-rah, to get motivated to come back and do more business.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I came back going, man, I have a list of 500 things that I'm going to do to implement in my business that I never thought of. And then I started looking at how am I doing from a business standpoint, and where can I be doing better? And holy cow, especially now with social media and the internet, there are an infinite number of resources to go to get that. And so I came back from the first one, and that enthusiasm lasted about 4 or 5 days. We got back on Friday, and we had to make it through the weekend. And then I had my list on Monday, and I worked on a couple things, and the list got buried and went in a drawer. And then I was dormant until the next year. And then I went the second year, and I came back with another list, and I made it about 6 weeks with that level of enthusiasm. I actually made some pretty big changes in my business. And then I came back the next year, and I got an accountability partner, which was just somebody else in my industry, not with our company, where we were going to talk every Friday. and help each other keep that as a focus of knocking these things out. And so now we listen to podcasts, read books, go to events all the time, and it's really changed not only my business practices, but also me as a person, I think. So there's a very long-winded answer.
No, I
Which-
think that was valid.
What's your definition of personal development, right?
No, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. From the business side, there's always going to be, usually at these conferences, usually there's some type of a health person there. I've worked out my whole life, done sports and all that, so that's something that's really important to me. And when I lose focus on that or lose sight of that, like I think it does spill over into your work life and whatnot.
Oh, sure.
Not feeling well, and I don't have the motivation to work out, and then all of a sudden you're lacking at work or whatever. But I mean, I think it can be more encompassing than that, but just from the business aspect, I mean, he pretty much hit it right on the head.
And again, there's people that are uber successful that don't go to those things, don't read books. They just have it within them, but I don't.
And I think in personal development, it's one of those things I think that you can, it's twofold or more in the sense that you can apply it to your personal life or you can apply it to work as far as what you're working on and trying to develop. Correct?
And
Absolutely.
and they completely like mesh together.
Right.
Like most of the stuff that you're like, oh, I'm probably going to implement this into my business.
Right.
In some way, shape, or form, it spills into your personal life as well.
It's hard to pinpoint one aspect that personal development covers because it covers all aspects. It covers your relationship with your loved ones, with your spouses, with your friends.
Yeah.
It covers everything. And so it's definitely I've definitely improved in both areas because I have had a big focus on it.
I think I could probably nutshell in the fact that I have no room for improvement. And, I think that's- and when you really realize that, that's when you're like, why spend the $180 for that seminar?
Well, and some people go and they don't get anything out of it.
No,
I'm with you.
Of course, I'll let you. Here's what it's kind of come down to, and
Pisses excellence.
That piss excellence every morning, and blood. But it's like different story. That's for another podcast. Is that later? So
That's a dangerous
this
thing
is
to
a
say on
dangerous
that.
subject.
You
no.
can't say that's for another podcast on this show because we're going to dive into
But I
it.
thought this was a podcast.
You
Yeah.
can't say that's for another one, though.
We can't
Because
do
now
that.
we're going to be talking about pissing blood.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk.
It's like triple stamp and a double stamp.
Yeah.
You just
Really,
can't
you
do
can't
it.
do that?
Nope.
Triple stamp, a double stamp.
God, there's some rules here that I'm really glad to know. So no, this has been the kind of thing. This is my wife has taken a new career on. So she was working for Oregon Food Bank for 10 years. She came out of college, did that whole thing, and she worked her way up through there into the PR and had become stagnant. And then she had taken a new course literally a new course, education for like, what was it? Content strategy. Whew, I better get that right. Content strategy, and has been able to leap over into IT. And that has been exciting for her. And so she's reading different things to help to expand herself in that area. And that's been really good. I've been doing this since 2001. And the thing that every time I crack a book on, the leadership styles, there's a lot of different stuff. The Disneyland thing, if Disneyland ran your hospital, there are all these different things. And it gets me thinking too much and second guessing my own natural kind of approach to things, which thus far has worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I feel pretty comfortable. I don't want to say comfortable, but so I feel comfortable with the results that I've been able to achieve through the way that I approach situations. One of the things that I've learned out of just process and just through time is to surround myself with the kind of people that I want to do that job, like experts. Your wife, had no experience in skilled nursing, but clearly was raw material. Not even raw material. She worked, she worked at a facility. She wasn't completely green. You know what I mean? But you could see clearly by meeting her and interviewing her that she was talented. And when you can identify talent, I don't want to start to corrupt that instrument. I don't want to start thinking too hard about it and second guessing it. So far, I've been able to make connections and identify talent and to have other talent educate that talent. Because by the way, I'm not I'm not always a developer. I'm just a supporter, you know, and that has worked for me. And I don't really want to corrupt that too much. I think the thing also is I'm not always 100% sold every day that I wake up that I'm the person to see this building through every day. Not until I get there. And then I start making decisions, and then I start talking to people and hearing what they're doing, and I get inspired by that. It seems like every day I get that, the fire gets lit, really. As a pilot light just going out the door, because I have a work ethic. You know, I show up early, I'm ready to work, I've already been on top of things. I have a certain expectation of myself, and certain daddy issues will make sure that you want people to be approving of your performance, so you're emailing early and stuff like that. But when I get there and I start seeing how people are doing and I get in their support, that's when I get the engine running and revving. And as long as I got that going, I have not yet found a book that has
Been more powerful
amplified that. Exactly. I would love to find it, don't get me wrong.
Well,
I'd love it if you did.
everyone wants to talk. This is great.
No,
This is good times.
No, I'm just going to, before you jump in, I love how honest you were with that answer, because I wanted to ask you that for a long time.
Sure.
Because being able to find inspiration within your own daily business activities, not every industry provides, and not everyone can do that. So that's awesome. And just hearing what you said, I would say what you said is personal development for people that are listening, right? Is
Essentially.
be able to look for inspiration. And then the other thing you said, and people really have to be careful, especially people like me that really get into personal development, is you can't apply and believe everything you read.
Right.
You have to pick pieces out that works for you, because you can get led down the wrong path. How many times, this is our 8th episode, have we talked about personal development books that are outdated and laughed at them?
Yeah.
Like the 4-Hour Work Week, right? And
Right.
so that stuff it does get proven right or wrong as time goes on. So it's easy to get too into personal development and then take away the wrong things.
Right.
Well, and like at the conference that we go to, they tell you like attend all the seminars, listen to all the people. You're gonna have a list of 30 things. Scale it down to 1 to 3, and do those really good. Like
Right.
don't try to do the whole entire thing,
Right.
because you're just gonna get lost. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think similar to Ben, I'm certainly not one. I've read my fair share of books on management styles and leadership. We've had a lot of guest speakers at some of the conferences that our company holds, and Ben and I both have been to a lot of Walker conferences. Not that those add a whole lot of
Nope.
nothing. I'm not going to say anything.
Nothing
negative
against.
about
Well,
that,
it's too late
anyways.
now.
But
I know.
there's not a
listen-
lot of takeaway
listen
that
to hacks.
Yeah,
I know.
it's not nothing negative about them, but there's not a lot of takeaway that we're going to learn from some of those conferences. But but I too believe that what I've done has worked well for me, and I can't say that I've gone to a lot of conferences or read a lot of books that I've taken a lot, like a whole idea away from saying, you know what, this is exactly how I'm going to change the way that I manage in my building. One of the things similar to Ben, I am the complete opposite of a micromanager. I try to hire people that are smarter than myself.
Please.
And I've succeeded at that. That's not very hard for me to do. But but the biggest thing I think that I've learned in my management style is I try to build a really, really good team, and have trust in that team. And sometimes, I've gone into buildings where I'm the outsider, and sometimes it takes a little bit of turnover and bringing some new people to build the team that you need to build. But once you get that team beneath you and they really support you, it makes your job so much easier. And I've said it 100 times, but I'm at a point right now in my building, and I was at a point when I was running my prior building, that I feel like I could leave for 2 months, and everybody I have in place is going to completely run my building for me while I'm gone, and I wouldn't have not one concern that they wouldn't do that. And to me, that's kind of how I measure my success is how well have I structured my building to where I can be as uninvolved as I want, and everything's going to run just fine because I have all the right key players in place.
Where people aren't dependent on
Where
you.
people aren't dependent on me,
Right.
and hired, inspired, and put people in positions where they feel like they have the ability to run their own small business within my building, to where they can make decisions on behalf of the building that they know I'm going to support.
Because people want to throw monkeys on your back all day, right?
Right.
Well, not you,
Yeah.
but in management,
Right.
right? They want because it gives them an out, right?
Yeah.
I gotta say that was well put. Honestly, like you say, hire, inspire, and then everybody run their own small business. Like, you find these people that are motivated internally to do their own great job, and all you gotta do is just keep fanning that flame.
Right.
You know what I mean? To fan that flame, support them, and and in our industry, people thrive off of. They don't expect anything in return that they're not already getting from, the personal reward of taking care of people and being in an industry where we have great outcomes and a kind of a larger machine. This is not something that we have to preach. It's like it's really comes from something internal, and then you can come by and you can just give them a zap, and just say like, outstanding job on this, or recognize something like this, or just kind of surprise and like on their desk is waiting for something, and a $4 mocha on somebody's desk when they come walking in, and it will run for a week, that kind of stuff. Like, now, I ask myself, it's like, what other industry would I want to be in? Could I be in something that's, I'm in the most highly regulated industry, all right, and it is incredibly punitive. Rules are one thing. Rules enforced to crush your soul, and make you feel like you've done something wrong at every turn.
Have you been in the mortgage industry?
Okay, so yeah, but do you have regulators come through and then post on the internet that you are causing harm?
Well, and
That's the thing, and that's like, if I feel like after an 11-hour day, 5 days a week, that I'm causing harm, I don't know that I can handle that every single day, but
in our industry,
but yeah, it's true. You guys have
Well-
rules on rules, right?
Yeah.
if
And they're always changing. Yeah.
if not us, because this is never happens, it never happens in our office. But if someone has a client that's upset, then they're upset and they go up through management or they voice it in whatever way. If you guys have a patient's upset, they call the state, and then
Federal regulators come
federal
in.
regulators are in your building within a certain amount of time.
Right, and if they cite you at a certain intensity, like harm or whatever else, I have to write a plan of correction that goes on the website, and then that will mark down my star rating. That can affect my reimbursement. That can bring down the entire energy of my building, and everybody and what they feel like they're really representing and what they're doing, and it's. That to me, when I ask myself, I'm like, do I want to be in another industry where that's not present? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't speak for hospitals, but I can tell you they don't seem to be running as hard or as fast as we do. And when you're looking at the hospital, could I do that? The thing is, I look at my people and I see what they do and what motivates them and the kind of energy they put in the thing, and then I feel like not an obligation, but a certain duty to these people to continue to support them. I don't want to hand them off to some halfwit.
Right.
And so that's what keeps me coming back, is like this same reason that you come back to your home, a lot of things like, this is my family, this is the kind of thing that I have to do. And as long as I got that, I don't want to read a book that's going to have to help me redefine that, because so far I'm still going at it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would say, for me, every time I go to a conference or if I do read a book, there's usually I usually pick one thing that I really take away from that.
Good.
And I try to, and I'll try to focus on that and say, that could really help me, or I could do a better job in doing that, and try to implement that in what I do at work, or maybe it's a leadership, team building type thing, and I think that's really important to do. And changing it up a little bit, but going on to what Ben was saying, you guys were talking about the regulations. One of the biggest struggles too with our industry and what we do now is the internet. And nowadays, when someone's looking at a place to send their loved one or their family member, brother or sister to be cared for, they're going online and reading reviews. And it's all that much. And that's one of the things. I mean, of course, we want to provide quality care and have everybody leaving our doors with having positive things to say about us. But I mean, I employ just one of my buildings. I employ just under 250 employees. And I think Ben's right there.
Yeah, about 211.
We have about the same amount of employees. And employees, obviously, they have the ability to do the exact same thing. But I mean, anybody could reach out and write a review online and make it as negative or positive as they want. And And honestly, and going back to liability, I mean, there's a heck of a lot of liability in our industry as well, in the care that we're providing. And a lot of times, sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes we do screw up. Having that relationship with that family member, that long-standing relationship with that family member, oftentimes prevents that from going that issue from going any further, because they know that you truly do care and that you're going to do everything you can in your power to make sure you make it right. But the power of the internet is a really scary thing, I think, particularly in our industry, because I can tell you some operators in our industry that have literally dedicated pages of that just badmouth the way they do business and how poorly they treat their employees, and that would have a significant impact probably on our employment, but also our reputation in the community and that sort of thing. So that's a really big thing I think that we have to keep an eye on as well.
What's the reputation cycle like in your industry? How long can you recover from something negative that could affect your reputation?
Okay, that's actually a really good question. If you have a strong reputation and you say have a bad survey, and that's when the regulators come in so here's how this whole cycle works. Like between 9 and 15 months, a team of regulators will routinely come through and do a full audit of your operation, front to back, top to bottom. Alrighty, starting with interviews with the families and observations on the floor, and then they come back if anything flags, and they go to those areas and they deep dive. Alrighty, and then anyway, so that can be about in my industry, about a 7 to 10 day adventure. It can be close to 5 days.
We're about 5 days.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you when they're coming. They give you like
No.
They give you a
They just
window or
show up. Well, you have a general window because you know when they came last year, and they can come 3 months before, or as many. Sometimes they're late and they're like 5 months after. But you're constantly watching, and it's a fatigue. But if each team, usually you'll have 1 or 2 members that might have been in your building before, but it's never in my experience been the same 5 people ever. And so there's a team dynamic that occurs amongst 5 people. A lot of things, even the same 5 people on a different day are going to be different in team dynamic. And imagine throwing together different 5 people, 2 the same and three others.
And is it like who can find the most violations?
It kind of depends on that person. Some
Yeah.
people got a real hard on to go out there and cite. That's all they want to do. They just want to cite. That's how they win. I mean, that's what they're finding. Like, if I can find all these things wrong, it's great. It's easy to criticize, I'd have to say, if they're not having done the work, right? So they can go through and they can cite. But the team dynamic can also where they can work themselves up. If they're not working well together, if things aren't going well, it can cause a mood amongst the team, and that can really make your survey go one way or the other a few degrees, right? But if that occurs and things just don't go in your way, and you have a bad survey, being pretty much close to the same building you were when you had a good survey, they just found heavier fault or more items or spent more time focusing in on things, and the regulations can be interpreted, you know what I mean? So they're interpreting the regulations to be a certain thing. Getting through this boring subject to a point is that bad survey goes on your website, right? And if you have harm, it kills your this and all that kind of thing, you can recover from that. If you have a couple of those, and then you find yourself losing staff, and you have a hard time recruiting because people can't come to work because your star rating, which is just like this really, really kind of like just really basic 5 stars. It does not boil down to 5 stars. You come down and you lose 2 stars, you go to 3 stars, and all of a sudden people aren't choosing you, so you have to select or be open to more difficult patients with behaviors.
Well, yeah, and I want to
Then
dive
that's
into
hard
that.
for staff, and staff don't want to work there so much. Then you have more difficulty recruiting good staff.
So if you have a lower rating, then you're going to take on patients that have maybe more needs.
Yeah, fewer
Right.
people are gonna go like, oh, people who want to say I'm only going to go to a 5-star building, maybe a 4-star building, are not going to go to a 3-star building. So if you happen to, for just some significant event, had dropped down to a 3-star building, they're not going to choose you. You are going to want to keep your doors open, so you're going to start accepting patients that are, that are more challenging. That maybe a 5-star building and say like, I can keep busy, not accepting this patient with all these behaviors.
I don't think people realize that too when they're selecting a facility to go to, is that your facility is also selecting you. based off of your needs and the way that you guys can serve them, right?
Yeah.
So maybe somebody with, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know nothing about.
No, I think
But
you're
like,
right on.
so maybe somebody with an addiction problem,
Right.
or somebody with an injury that requires drugs that are more maintenance specific, that require you to have certain staff to deal with those people, right? So you guys can pick and choose who you want to accept as a patient based off the care you can provide them.
Absolutely right.
Sorry, I want to answer, you'd asked a question, I think Ben had answered, but I also want to answer it. But I want to make the point, I do not envy Ben in that the side of his industry is so much more heavily regulated than ours. You know, we have surveyors that come in that unannounced. Typically, they'll come in between 9 and 10 a.m. on a Monday or Tuesday and spend the rest of the week with us. You know, and I can say from experience, Ben and his wife were over having dinner with us one night at 8 p.m. at night. And we had just cracked a bottle of wine, and he got a call, and he was in state survey for his annual state survey at 8 o'clock at night.
I was
So-
changing in the bathroom. I had to put my shoes back on. So.
Right.
Yeah, no,
So,
I'm gonna get casual.
It's
You have to take an Uber?
it's a little different.
No, I didn't even get the wine.
But you had asked the question: how soon can your reputation kind of affect? can
That
it
cycle, right?
Yeah. How soon? How fast can it cycle? You know, and I would say for my industry, I certainly think that it can be just within a matter of a few months. And you know, the biggest contributing factor is if you have people going out, if you've got residents going out the door unhappy with care complaints. Typically, before you get to that point, though, it starts with the staff. You know, typically, if you have staff going out the door unhappy and
Yeah.
not a good culture in your building, that's typically where it starts. And it doesn't take long for that to fall onto the residents and the quality of care that you're providing. You know, and I don't think, you know, and from working with all these different communities in our area, similar to Ben's and in my communities, other assisted living communities, I think the hard reality, I think for myself, that I think is for most people, that's a very hard and almost impossible thing to bounce back from unless you change. It could take years for the same, in my position, let's say my reputation went to hell. It could take me years to bounce back from that reputation within my community, or several months. But I think if you changed out my position and you brought somebody new in, everybody in the community is now much more open to seeing the change than they would be, knowing that you're the person that lost the reputation and still in the same position.
I think
That's
he
interesting.
summarized it really well. That's absolutely true. It comes right back down to the staff. I think that's taking the long road around to saying that if you cannot hold on to staff because things go so difficult and then they're not really bought into the culture, that you're going to have turnover, and then it's a downward slope from there. But you can recover if you hold on to the same team of people and everybody bands together to kind of say, like, okay, that's our plan of correction. We're going to hold on to our plan of correction, and we got through, and you can resurface in a certain amount of time. I've seen that with one of our local folks. It just took a big hit, and they have a long-standing reputation. They're surviving.
But it's something that I think we have, in the size of our buildings, the amount of staff that we have to look at it on even a smaller scale and within our departments. And if you have a department manager that has struggled and despite your coaching or whatever the circumstances might be, but has kind of lost their ability to retain and rebuild that trust and strength with their team, and they're kind of beyond retaining as an employee, you know, a lot of times you're a lot better off kind of cutting your losses and trying to find the new person that's going to come in, and your staff are going to be much more open to seeing the change now because they had lost that trust in that person, and it takes such a long time to rebuild that trust as opposed to bringing in a new face that people feel open now to seeing what the change is going to be.
Well, and if they see somebody slacking or not living up to their end of the bargain, then they're going to lose respect for you because you're not holding them accountable, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Why am I working so hard?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of your referral partners are the hospitals, right, that are
Yeah.
discharging these patients.
They're upstream.
And so reputation with them, I would assume, is important too. And one of the reasons I ask this question is because if you are successful enough in business and you're doing enough business, you're going to have bad experiences with your clients at some point, right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
even if you're 5 stars, there's going to be something bad that happens, maybe totally outside of your control. And in our business,
Oh,
we're
no. There's going to be something bad that happens within your control.
That too. You will make a bad call.
You will.
yeah. Well, everyone makes
That will happen.
Nobody except Ben is infallible, right?
Right.
No, I just said I had no room for improvement. It's different. It's different. That's true. Buy my book, you know. I'm kidding.
But so for me, if I have, let's say somebody sends me a referral, and for some reason that referral goes poorly, it's easy to panic and go, I just screwed up. This person's never going to send me any, and it's easy just to abandon it, right? We're much more transactional, but it's much easier just to go, oh, they're never going to refer me and move on instead of going back and trying to rebuild it. Hey, this is what happened. We're going to fix it. We're 5 stars. You know our service. And so I think that that's something that can separate people that continue a good reputation with things that happen in or out of their control versus the people that go, well, there goes that referral partner. We're never getting anything from them again.
Right.
Right.
Some level of comfort comes from the truth in our industry that something bad can happen. We're constantly exposed. We're only as good as the decision that's being made right now by the CNA on the floor, right this moment. At any time, something could happen. One of his nurses can be making a decision that could cause a major issue just based off their decision. How you react or how you respond to that is going to be the thing that makes a difference. So if a medication error causes, if a minor medication error on a fragile person causes a significant change in condition that sends them to the hospital and that sets them back really far, what you do at that point. Now, the hospital has them now, so they're going to stabilize them. And you're going to do everything. Reaching out to what you do at that point is going to make all the difference. It is, and I think you guys can appreciate this too. If something goes wrong, how you act as a person at that point, and there's no regulation on this one. This is all about how you put yourself into this position at this point. Is reaching out to the family to talk to them.
Just owning it.
And owning it and talking to them and getting their feedback and getting the temperature there. Absolutely. And then listening and not trying to make excuses.
Right.
Maybe educating them, but if it's the right time, because there's a lot of stuff they may not know. Half of our issues are the fact that families don't know what we're doing because we don't have the time or the ability to call them up and tell them all the things that we're doing. You know what I mean? They just don't know. And so not knowing is the problem. But to reach out and to work with that family and see where that lies, and at least to make that effort. At the exact same time, identifying whether you have a weakness within your program and immediately fixing it. You know what I mean? It's not always firing that person. It could be education all the way across a certain discipline or department, and going that direction, how you react. So when things do fall out from that, when things come to you, people are going to then what did you do? Well, I can tell you what I did. I got out of bed at 3 a.m, went down to the building and with my director of nursing, and we looked to make sure that everybody else was safe, and then this is how we did that, and in depth and in detail.
Right.
And they're going to be like, who's going to fault that? An error occurred. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
So,
But if you're scared and you procrastinate to pick up the phone and make that bad phone call, you're only going to make the situation worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you want to
Good
try to make excuses or divert the issue, as opposed to a lot of times it's so much better to own up to it and be a human being and say, you know what, I'm really sorry.
I'd be mad if I was you too.
how-
Yes.
We really
how
screwed
you-
up.
Jocko Willing's book, it's literally called Extreme Ownership, former Navy SEAL. We both own copies of the book. I think it would be awesome for you guys to read it.
It's killer.
He
Here's a
just
podcast.
literally talks about his motto is own it. Own
Well,
it
and
with everything.
And one of the mistakes in that book is a friendly fire situation in Ramadi,
Yeah.
where you have 2 Navy SEALs shooting at each other.
Sure.
And so he had to go back and own that mistake.
Yeah, and he was trying to come up with, every reason as to why it wasn't his fault. Even if it wasn't his fault, he literally sucked it up and he went to these high-ranking generals and goes, "It's completely my fault. It's completely unacceptable." And he goes, "I thought I was probably going to lose my job," and it turns out that they were like, "Oh,
Now we
Like-
understand why. it
Yeah.
happened.
Because he could have blamed it on a soldier in a lower rank that miscommunicated something.
Right.
And same thing with what you just said,
Right.
is that, both of you, is that I'm sure there are administrators in your industry that in a tough situation roll out their staff, place the blame on somebody else underneath them, right? Because that's the easy way out.
Yeah, it seems like a solution.
Just to back up just to Harry, you were talking a little bit about our referral partners and that relationship. You know, one of the things, we're a little bit different than Ben in that realm, because he can take a much higher level of care than assisted living communities can. But you know, every assisted living community is structured a little bit differently with their nursing support, their staffing ratios, what they can and can't provide. You know, we have the benefit of I'm staffed very heavily on nurses.
Yep.
So we have 24-hour licensed nurses around the clock, 365 days a year. And then in addition to that, I've got about 5 administrative nurses in my building. So, and I'm blessed in that they've developed those really good relationships with those discharge planners at the hospital and the social workers at the hospital, and have built that trust over the years. But one of the things we have to be really careful about in our industry is there's a fine line of what level of care we can take and be successful with, because you don't want to fail and have someone leaving with a bad taste in their mouth, or going back to the hospital telling them we weren't successful with the care that we provided. But on the other end of it, if we're getting a referral from the hospital, we also can't cherry pick and only take the easy people that we know we're gonna succeed with. And that's kind of a fine line that we have, that we struggle with and are constantly juggling back and forth with our nursing staff, is being able to identify, you know, what we can and can't provide, but also trying to maintain that relationship and make sure that we're doing the hospital a service and taking people when they need to get them out the door to our buildings.
Serving a lot
So-
of masters on that one. Like you're saying, you're serving a lot of masters.
You
like
are,
you're saying,
yeah.
Your hospitals need you need to take a cross section. They will never have respect for a downstream provider that only takes the easy patients, leaving them with the hardest patients to place. You know, so we will take those harder patients, even though we could take an easier patient, because that just shows that we. First off, I think it's good for the staff to be exposed to that. I don't want them to have like just like this Mayberry kind of skilled nursing.
Pull your
center.
mic in a little bit.
A Mayberry kind of skilled nursing center. You know what I mean? Like you have to have. We should be taking some of the tougher patients. We should be keeping our clinical skills sharp. We should be doing stuff. That's the way that I sell it. But the truth of the matter is, for a hospital case manager who has, these 3 super easy patients to place, and let's just kind of go into it, heavier care patients. When I say heavier, we're talking about a bigger patient.
Like
stuff that.
bariatrics?
Yeah, excellent. And stuff like that. And you say, I have the equipment, I can do that, and you take that patient off of them. Then you maintain that relationship. And I think you also have better credit. I mean, really, what kind of place are you going to have if you're only taking the easiest patients? You know, you're not really going to have, you're going to be just soft. And so they're not going to, I think it keeps your clinical skills going, it keeps your relationship going with the hospital, and then they'll be like grateful to you, and you're going to be their go-to person. It's a
Well, they're going to
back scratch
repay that,
situation.
right?
Yes, they
Because
always
may
do.
have a difficult case they're going to give you, but you took really good care of them, so they're going to give you some of the easier ones too.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar with our referral relationships.
really?
Very similar.
Yeah, if you have a very unestablished relationship with with a referral partner, you're going to get the junk, all day long.
And here's the definition of junk, right? So let's say I'm approaching a new referral partner, like a real estate office, to refer me business.
Sure.
Well, they may test me out with a manufactured home on 10 acres that also has a Christmas tree farm attached, right?
I can picture it right now.
Yeah,
actually.
that
It's a very
buyer,
hard loan to do.
yeah, that buyer deserves that property and deserves the customer service and attention just as much as everybody else, just like the bariatric patient, right? But the amount of resources, energy, and time to get that deal done is going to be much more difficult, as opposed to the doctor with 30% down buying $1 million house that's been in the industry and had been in his job for 30 years, right?
Right.
Which is a relatively simple transaction. It's not going to take a lot of time and resources. But those referral partners sending us those deals will often, either one, they're not very good, and the only clients they have are the Christmas tree manufacturing home people, or they're going to test you out and see how you do, and they're not going to give you all their good stuff and give their bad stuff to somebody else. So you have to do well on both, right? So it's very similar.
Wow. Absolutely, I can see that parallels.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of the podcast so far?
Good.
I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys
absolutely.
made it on. When I first started talking about this, it's hard, it's that whole fear thing, fear of doing something out of your comfort zone. And so approaching people I respect that are friends with, you definitely have to get over that. Oh, maybe they'll think I'm an idiot for doing something totally crazy. So I appreciate you guys coming on. We're not even close to being done. I just wanted to say that.
I thought he was showing us the door.
Yeah,
I always say, so it's getting late. Yeah, you should be going home. Are you gonna call us a cab?
Don't you have a cell phone? Call your own cab.
That's great. Okay. I appreciate it. No, I'm having a good time.
Can we totally change gears? I mean, we can keep going on this. I think that a lot of people outside of our industry that do like personal development are going to listen to this, and I'm taking away a lot from this conversations, as I have with both of you guys. Okay, can we switch gears? Or do you guys want to keep going?
I'm ready to do that.
We can switch gears if you want.
Yeah.
One thing before we switch gears, if you don't mind.
No, let's do it.
Sorry. One thing I just wanted to add that I just kind of came to mind that I thought was important, that I feel like Ben and I both kind of do a good job of, and I think every industry is a little bit different in that. And I talked a little bit about building relationships with people in the community. But just a week ago, Ben and I went golfing with his two closest competitors.
Yeah.
That
was cool.
And
Was it for like a fundraiser or something?
No.
no, it's just to have a good time.
Fun.
And
Razor, if
just
anything,
build,
yeah.
build those relationships. They're fun, great people, and I work with all three of them. But it's great that Ben and the other two, being the closest competitors in town, I mean, they get along great.
Mm-hmm.
They share a lot of commonalities. I guarantee they pick up the phone and call each other if they've got an issue or a concern or want to know how things are going in each other's buildings. And I think that's really important, and you can apply that to probably almost any business or industry. And I do the same thing. There's a building right down the street from us that is by far my biggest competitor in town. And if I have a family or a resident that's inquiring to move into his place and potentially leaving my place unhappy, he calls me.
Really?
And I do the same thing for him, and says, "Hey, I just want you to know this person is looking to move, and they're not and they're kind of disgruntled about something, or sounds like you could do, you might want to touch base with them and figure out what's going on." And we have that. And funny thing, I invited him to go golfing next week. But it's nice. It's really nice having that relationship with him. And others in the community to where it can be professional and respectful. And I think people really appreciate that. There's always those competitors out there that are going to be sending you, we get direct mailers to my building that go to all my residents that tell from some big competitor that's publicly owned and tells them about all the great specials they're running and all this, that, and the other thing. And they're trying to coax your residents into jumping ship and moving from one building to the other. But to have that professional courtesy and be able to pick up the phone with the other top contender in town and that does a really good job. It's nice to have that. And when people are leaving my building, or if people are inquiring to move in but don't move in, I'm happy to tell them these are the two places in town that I would recommend looking at. If you don't choose my place, these are the other two places I'd look at because they do a really good job. And I think Ben would do that same thing for the other people that we spent time with last week.
That's true.
And for the long haul, and better serving the community.
Yeah.
I feel good living in a community where we have big pillar companies in our community that work well together, that have good ethics.
That has a lot to do with this community, honestly. It's really unique to Clark County. I mean, I come over from Portland where it's a dog eat dog. They don't have a certificate of need.
Total cutthroat.
Cutthroat. Anybody can build anywhere, skilled nursing or whatever else. And it is. And you can build those relationships some places, but perfectly honest, like this this community is probably more tightly knit. And I'm so sorry. I think I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No. I
right.
think you went right with what I'm saying. And we're lucky to live in it. And it's very similar in every industry, right? You can be cutthroat and roll people under the bus. And
Right.
And it comes back. You may get ahead quickly in the short run by doing that, but it's
Yeah.
going to come back and bite you.
It's called karma.
Absolutely, it's called karma, and I think anybody with half the sense is gonna probably lose respect for somebody that's over there trying to throw somebody under the bus. The best kind of sales you can do is look like the guy who's sending somebody to go tour. Like when someone tours me, I'll say, you should really go check out another place. And here's a couple of places that honestly, if we're not your fit, these have great reputations, and I would recommend. And those are actually those two cats we golf with, and you send them that direction. And I say, these are the areas you're going to want to look most closely at. Well, you're pointing out, all of a sudden now you're the authority. You know, you're giving
Yeah.
them guidance, and you are kind of like the authority, and you're sending them off, and they're going to want to kind of probably come back. I mean, it has its own technique there as well. And then you're like, you know, the what's the term, the counter sell, or whatever it is, you know, where you just try to move people along, and then people are like, no, I want to come back. You know, and there's a kind of a thing there. But the truth is, people will buy into integrity. They're already in an emotional situation. They're in an emotional sell. And I think that having somebody who's just kind of like a real human being and says something like that is going to have it go a long way. But I mean it. I would never send them some other place. I wouldn't recommend a place that I didn't think was going to be good. So,
Is there a discrepancy in cost to the consumer among you and your competitors?
not for me so much, because it's their insurance that pays.
Yeah, for us, there's a significant discrepancy in cost. We don't, there's several communities in our area that accept Medicaid. It's a form of state payment through the state. We're all private pay in our building. Most places that do take Medicaid, they require 2 to 3 years typically of private pay before you spend down to Medicaid. But I won't dive into all of it, but the state of Washington, Ben and I have been up on the Hill in Olympia, talking with folks,
Is that what you're after?
and at conferences where it's a big topic of discussion. But the reimbursement in Washington State for Medicaid is far too low. And in fact, they pay more on a daily basis for inmates in prisons than they
Yes.
do for senior living Medicaid in Washington State.
That's
So
accurate.
That's crazy.
It's really
Say that again, because
they pay more. The state of Washington pays more for inmates in prison on a daily basis than they do reimburse for senior citizens in communities for Medicaid. So
Yeah.
we so it's a big issue in our area. It's forced a lot of people in assisted living type the assisted living realm to not want to license their units as Medicaid because the reimbursement's so low. You're losing money right off the top.
who suffers?
Right. Yeah, and there's no benefit in it. Even if you were breaking even, that would be one thing, but that's not the case with the reimbursement rate in Washington State. So it's a big issue. But so there's a very big discrepancy in a lot of buildings, and of course, with that, you see a lot of discrepancy in quality of amenities, building to building because of that. And the unfortunate part about our industry is it's really expensive
Yeah.
to live in one of our communities, and retire to live in one of our communities. The unfortunate part is it's not that much cheaper to live in one of the
Lower quality.
armpits of our communities.
Yeah.
It's expensive all around, but the places that have the poor reputations provide poor quality of care and don't have those amenities, they're not that much cheaper, unfortunately. So, but there's a lot that goes into it though. It's not, you can't look at cost of living and compare it to living in one of our communities just because of the amount of staff that we have, the food that we provide, the size of our buildings, the amenities that we offer. It's
Apples
a
and
lot
oranges.
of a lot of times people try to do apples to apples because we do have typically there's an increase living in senior living communities. I would say it's probably on average 5 to 7% a year, and we try to keep that on the lower end in our buildings, but but you can't a lot of times people try to compare cost of living to the increase that they would see in a senior living community year over year, and you can't do that with minimum wage just jumped like
Couple bucks.
a couple bucks an hour, and in buildings our size, that can be $500,000 difference a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Well, you just answered 3 questions I had. I was going to ask. That's great, though. But can you guys expand a little bit on healthcare, the changes with Obamacare, both when it got initiated and then now the proposed changes, and how does that affect you guys? And how does that affect your patients, for better or worse? Is that something that people should be thinking about?
Well, Obamacare is going to be the elimination of the Medicaid expansion. We are both in positions not to be so heavily impacted by Medicaid as a reimbursement, so there's that. Not to say I'm not at all impacted by it. The Medicaid expansion has allowed people who have deferred access or have not had access to health care or deferred health issues for a long time because of employer costs and stuff like that, have given them access, and then they've gone in and got that taken care of, and then they've become skilled nursing patients. But I've had to limit that to a certain degree because then again, it is the state funding it, and so it's going to be pretty limited. I'm going to end up spending more than I'm going to be getting. It's going to be break even on a good day, okay. But it's a lot better than it's mitigated a lot of the loss, So I'll also be able to take more of those patients. This is a really boring answer, right? But what's changed in healthcare? The only thing. Healthcare has not changed except to change more quickly and more drastically. Let me tell you, from my standpoint, is that we don't really know what kind of changes are coming back because they can't agree on a plan. All right, do they want to repeal it entirely and just leave us back where we were and 24 million more people uninsured? How's that gonna affect us? I think that's gonna affect my staff and their families more. Right. Honestly, and there's going to be a lot of life changes that it might affect my. I'm not saying that I underpay my folks, but I'm going to say that there are a number of people who rely on some social service to a certain degree because, however they're structured in their personal life, that's just going to change something, and we're going to feel a ripple effect on that. What I'm seeing more of, and this has nothing to do with the administration in office right now, or little to do with the administration in office, is we're seeing compounding regulations. Where I am the most highly regulated industry, and we have 500 plus federal regulations, they just added a bunch more. Mm-hmm. And now they're redefining a bunch more. Why? I don't know. But healthcare has changed only to become more difficult to navigate as a provider. It's becoming more punitive. And this is where I want to kind of go on record and saying that I don't understand this. This is me just coming in. Just imagine it's kind of like just small town country boy just coming in and looking at this and trying to understand that regulations have only increased over the last 15, 20 years.
Keep going.
More and more and more and more, right? I'm going to talk to Ryan.
Right.
And they've only increased more and more and more, right? And so you would think with more regulation and more funding towards regulators, you'd think that there would be, kind of like putting more cops and more firemen into the situation, there would be an improvement, right, in the overall situation that they're regulating. But now they literally have marching orders to intensify their inspection of things, and to create, or to basically to generate more citations at a higher intensity, at a higher level. You feel better?
Oh, dude.
Right on. And so you're thinking to yourself, so
you're gonna have to bring catheters with you next time.
If I was looking at this from any normal standpoint, I'd have to say, if there are only harsher, more intense citations and a higher volume, you know what I mean? If the murder rate went up and the number of murders, and how the violent crimes had gone up, even after putting more cops on the street and more money into the police force, I would not call that a successful program. But somehow or another, that's the way it's going, and no one's looking that direction. I would have to say, can you say that care has improved if all the report cards are only getting worse? you know, and they're not. The care is actually improving there. And so that's what I'm finding. It's like they're just getting meaner.
Just to add to that, as an example, so Ben had talked about how everything's the regulations are just getting higher and higher and higher on us, and
Stakes are higher.
You know, I say recently, it's been a few years now, but there was a bill that was passed, and you might know the name of the bill off the top of your head, but essentially it forced myself, Ben, the hospital, every adult family home, to start hiring CNAs. The option was to either hire CNAs or to hire people that were HCAs, or to go through to implement your own HCA program, which essentially is like 80 hours of training, I think.
Can you just quickly?
Sorry, yeah. So
what's a CNA? And
a
what's
CNA is a certified nurse's assistant. An HCA is a home care aide. So they either had to have a home care aide certification or a certified nurse's assistant. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't hire HCAs, can you?
No, they have to be certified.
So, but essentially, and maybe prior to that, I don't know, you guys might have been hiring CNAs all along.
Yeah, we have to. We can't
So-
have anything else.
But the impact it had on my building is prior to that bill passing, I could basically hire anybody off the street that could pass a background check and a drug screen. They had to go through our own internal orientation and training process that was approved by the state. And that was all we had to do to hire and train to get caregivers to work for us, you know. And so 3 or 4 years ago, I mean, I could post an ad for a part-time or full-time caregiving position. I'd have 40 applicants. And when they passed that bill, and the bill was, you know, it sounds great. We're going to increase the amount of training that your employees have to be able to provide care for people. And they've got to go through this. Basically, it's like a 2-week course, and so essentially it's 2 weeks of class time and 2 weeks of clinical time that they have to do. And
you have to provide that.
right, we have to provide it, or they get it on their own, and they can take that with them wherever they go, if they go through nursing school or wherever they go. But typically, being a caregiver for our buildings is a stepping stone into nursing school, or if they want to be a PA or whatever they might do with their career. But what it ended up doing to us is it created a huge challenge, because there became a huge shortage of CNAs in our area, which is Clark County. And if you went on Craigslist today and you looked up CNA as a job posting, there's hundreds. I'd be surprised if there was less than 200 job postings for CNAs right now. And it took, and at that point in time when that bill passed, I bet you 5% of my applicants were CNAs. And the challenge is all the people that were applying to be caregivers that weren't CNAs, most of those people were looking to be caregivers as a career. A lot of them were middle-aged women, maybe they're empty nesters, and they had they wanted to care for people. They had a genuine vested interest in doing that position. And that nothing against CNAs but the majority of the people that we get that are CNAs, they're CNAs because that's a stepping stone for them in their career. So naturally, my turnover is now that much higher, because those people most of them only have gone through that process of becoming a CNA to further their education and career, which of course we all promote. But the reality is, I would have to say over that time frame, my quality of staff went down, because I wasn't getting the people that were coming in where caregiving was their passion, and that's what they were, you know. And at that time, I had several staff that were middle-aged women and 5 to 7 year employees, you know. And through turnover, that's very much dwindled to the longevity of some of my staff, just because of that natural turnover and the competitiveness. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, why would a caregiver come work for me when they can go work for Ben for 50 cents to $1 more an hour, or better yet, get $2 more an hour at the hospital, and it can compete at this huge competitive edge. I mean, I've got, you know, I employ maybe 80 to 100 caregivers at my building, and I've got in-home care agencies that come in and provide care for some residents that are driving cars into my building that are saying $500 sign-on bonuses for CNAs. That's how competitive it's gotten.
That sucks.
And that's what that bill that got passed caused that shortage. And honestly, it resulted in poor poorer quality of care for residents and patients because the shortage of staff.
Creating a vacuum.
So does your facilities and you as directors or administrators, do you guys have sounding boards where you can help on a state, local level, kind of dictate these bills and help?
Do we have what?
A sounding board.
A sounding board for your
trying to-
legislatures to get these bills formed in a way that's going to benefit everybody, or?
We have like political action committees. Yeah.
That's something Ben's actually much more involved in than I am with WACA and.
Right.
I mean, Ben's, you've been up on Capitol Hill in Olympia a lot of times pushing different issues with
The way the Washington Healthcare Association, which is WACA, what we're talking about, we're both. It's our association. It's professional guild. It's a collection of nonprofits. It's a collection of post-acute providers that all pool in their money to have a louder voice on the Hill, right? Like anything else, I think you see this in almost any industry or any interest, and healthcare. The hospital, Washington State Hospital Association, they have the same thing. Ultimately it's a lobbying group. Okay, when it comes down to it, trying to amplify the voice of the people who are the providers and all that kind of stuff. But more interesting, what it's done is that it takes, you have legislators who are writing these bills that on paper, it sounds fantastic. I mean, honestly, to take Drew's community, which can serve, 100, 200, 300 people, and you're like, let's make sure that everybody is licensed under the state of Washington to be a certified nursing. Oh my God, Bob, that's great.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
it makes sense. That's fantastic. Bob, don't look at how many people are going through the programs and what the access is to the programs and what you're actually doing to those rural programs. You know what I mean? Where kids like leave at 18, that no one wants to be, Okanagan, at 19, 20 years old too often. And that's going to cause a vacuum in the labor pool. And then all of a sudden they're going to be working on a staffing shortage. So that kind of thing can be difficult. So what they do is we lobby hard and we get up there and we get up on the Hill and we talk to these folks that are making decisions about our industry that are hearing for the first time from us. If we get the opportunity to get out of our building and sit there, for the first time they're hearing something about the industry itself that they're making a decision about. I would not want to be. That's why, too often Drew and I are sitting in our office and somebody from social services or nursing is like, listen, I need you to help me with a decision. I'm like, well, I think I need you to help me understand what the hell I'm making a decision about, And so here these legislators are doing the same thing. They are not experts, and so they're getting information from their staffers, and their staffers are only that information is only as good as the people they're reaching out to. They have very little clue of what they're really making decisions on. But once they pass that and they get enough votes, it becomes reality.
It happened in the mortgage industry
Did
as
it?
well. Yeah, government got involved, and people that didn't have direct mortgage experience started making decisions, changing regulations. For example, our old good faith estimate went from a very clear to read one-page document to a very hard to read 3-page document that didn't make sense, didn't have the customer's actual monthly payment on it. It didn't break out the closing costs properly, so borrowers confused. It confused most of the loan officers in the industry. And so to take something that was very simple, and they thought, oh, well, let's just do this, this, and this. And they've since changed it, and it's gotten a bit better.
Yeah.
But, it's the same thing happened in the mortgage industry as well.
I think, I can go on a tangent about this, which I won't, but
Which I will not.
but I think it can happen on just about every level. And I'm big into fishing. I'm big into hunting. One of the biggest challenges being a hunter and a fisherman, and a lot of the people that live out in the country and are dealing with wildlife, especially predator management and things like that. Seattle decides what's going to happen with predator management in Washington State.
And it doesn't make sense for everywhere else.
And Portland
Right.
makes decisions on what's going to happen with predator management in Oregon. And the guy living down in Pendleton
Right.
or in John Day, who's got a cougar problem or now a wolf problem, didn't really have a say in it because 99% of the votes came from Portland.
Well, I think we should just split the state in half.
Right. but I guess I'm not trying to. I don't want to divert everything to hunting.
Gerrymandering.
But I will say that similarly, though, in our industry, it was a similar thing. It got passed. It sounded great. It made sense to pass a bill. We're requiring everybody to have better education, but nobody really looked at the impact it was actually going to have. If they did that, they should have made it much more affordable and available to acquire that the training.
Yeah.
I'm with him on that one.
You know,
Yeah,
It just
too
seems
late
like
to-
there's got to be a better way than making big, massive changes on a federal or even a full state
right.
so quickly and so big at the same time in reaction to something. In our industry, Ryan alluded to a little bit, it's eerie after talking to you guys how similar they are, because you had Obamacare, we had the Dodd-Frank Act,
Right.
right? That came in and completely leveled everything. Whole new regulator. There was the CFPB is a new regulator. Major fines, lots of money, killed everything. Rewrote all of our paperwork for better or for worse. And now, new administration talking about changing it or getting rid of it. So just like Obamacare, it was repeal and replace. Now it's just maybe repeal and replace later. So they're going through the same thing with the Dodd-Frank Act. And it's like, tell me how to do it one way or the other, but don't go back and forth, because it costs us a ton of money. It puts us at a lot of liability to do things the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
And at the end, it's not benefiting the people that we serve, which is our consumers.
Well, and just like it cost you guys more money, because now all of a sudden you have to have, a CNA versus somebody that through a state certified program, these people are being trained for you guys, and now it costs you more money. Same thing happened. They came in, made all these new rules to make it better for the consumer. They added more middlemen in the process, and it's actually more expensive to get a mortgage than it was prior. Now, there are some good rules that absolutely came from some of it that make our housing industry and mortgage industry better and safer. But like they came through and completely changed the way a loan officer is paid. They regulated the way we were paid.
I just
Really?
like community, local, let the community make we're going political now, which I'm really impressed, Ben.
Did you say that we wanted to
You and I have
shift
made it.
gears?
Yeah,
Change gears.
We-
We're supposed to say politics, but
Dude.
we're changing gears.
Ben and I have talked about politics for like 20 minutes. It's pretty impressive.
That's fine. But we talked about healthcare politics. Well, all you're gonna do is get me to complain. But I mean, it's like
So you were talking about changing gears. Where were you going to go?
yeah.
I'm
actually-
curious.
I was
Because
I just
Drew
was-
had like one more thing he was going to say. No,
Do you-
Yeah,
do you have
I'm
any-
sorry.
no, actually, it was passionate.
I knew you
appreciate it.
guys were going to be great. I knew you guys were going to be
You're
great.
just saying that.
No, I can't wait to go
like
back
you.
and re-listen. Just when you and I were sitting at Tip Top, we talked a lot about your leadership models.
Oh, that's good because I didn't get a phone call. When was that?
It was
Yeah.
The invitation was lost in the mail.
Bastards.
Well, what we should have done, is played a round of golf and discussed the podcast prior to doing the podcast. That would have been.
I just called your wife before to see if you had permission. She said no.
Oh, yeah. I was out there. I was too busy grilling vegetables. Yeah, I was out there making.
How do you
some-
like your eggplant? Rare, medium rare?
exactly? Into like in the dumpster.
Oh, let's
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let's switch. Yeah,
Let's do it. Hard right.
Ben, you be the host, and you ask some hunting questions, because
Yeah, that's a good point.
I
Because I,
would
don't kill
love
anything.
to take you out. We almost cut you out last year.
Ben
but,
actually wants to go hunting though.
well,
I do.
just
I
as
do
long
wanna-
as it's above, if it's above 40 degrees and below 70 degrees, we'll go hunting. Because I was going to take him out when we got that freeze.
Okay.
And Ben goes to my wife, "Is he really going to take me out? And it's frozen out."
Well,
Why
it
are
was
we
just
going-
really funny because as soon as I brought that up, he was just thrilled to the gills, giddy. Actually, because one of his real friends just owned up to being able to go out with him. You know, somebody he wasn't going to
Next.
have to like carry. Somebody who wasn't going to have to carry out there. You know, where's my cocoa? That's what I was upset about.
We've had very little hunting conversation, so let's have it.
I want to hear this. Okay,
We're
so
talking about hunting.
let's talk about hunting. I want to learn about hunting. Okay, I want to know. Let's just throw this really quick. I'm going to hit him first, okay, on this way. So, were you born and raised hunting, or is this something that you discovered later on? I mean, knew about, but is this something you became passionate about later on? And if so, tell me.
About 25 years old is when I became passionate for it.
It's called the term is late in life hillbilly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, and I think it's kind of a trend for people discovering hunting later in their lives because we don't live in a hunting community here.
That's not true.
How is
you,
that?
You
Is
just
that
didn't.
true?
You didn't grow up in a hunting family.
Well, but okay, you compare hunting here to hunting in Yakima or Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington. It's not like I don't go to Dick Hanna to buy my truck and have taxidermy on the walls. But if I go to Idaho, there's taxidermy on the walls. Okay,
True. That's absolutely. I've heard about that.
so. But my parents are great. It doesn't make them. I mean, my dad was awesome, but he didn't have a passion for hunting and fishing. Never did Boy Scouts. But I had a great childhood, lots of things, because there's a lot of opportunities for hobbies and development with kids. Just hunting and fishing wasn't my family's way. But I had a lot of friends that did, and when I was in my early 20s, I bought a shotgun and to start shooting skeet with one of my best friends, and that turned into a pheasant hunt, and then absolutely fell in love with hunting with bird dogs. I think the bird dog passion came before hunting.
Okay.
And the first time I went pheasant hunting, I knew I was going to buy a bird dog. I talked about it for a couple of years, did a ton of research, and sure, it was fun shooting pheasants. I loved that too, but it was the bird dog relationship. And I also grew up without a dog. So maybe that was why.
Right.
That's not right.
And I kind of, because you never grew up with it, I kind of fell off the deep end and went head over heels way into hunting and fishing.
Right.
And it became a huge passion and a lifestyle, and that's how I'm raising my daughter now. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, actually. Right on.
And then hunting isn't, you don't just don't hunt. There's 300 different types of hunting and fishing, right? So it's a lifetime, like this museum, he's hunted over 40 years for this museum.
This museum's incredible.
It's amazing.
So you can constantly deepen your love, your passion for hunting in different aspects. Bow hunting, different types of fishing. I did muzzleloader hunting, black powder hunting for a few years. And you can really kind of pick and choose what you like. So where I'm at now, I'm 36. I love bird hunting. Absolutely love duck hunting. Huge passion of mine. Not in love with big game hunting. I like to do it on occasion, but I don't have the dedication and the athleticism and the passion for it.
Well, you're a pretty fit guy. I'm not hitting on you. I just think you're pretty fit. You can.
Oh, I thought
do
you said
some
fit.
big-
That's
no,
good. You said
fit.
fit. Okay.
Fit. Like
It's like, oh man.
yeah.
Hey, if you
I'm not
called
trying to
me
step
a,
on Carissa's toes, but
if,
I think you're pretty. I think you can.
I think
do
you
some
can
big.
hack.
Yeah,
are
you
we
can
gonna
hack.
go? Are we gonna go hunting? And you're gonna say, "I'm sorry, all I have is this 2-person sleeping bag."
Yeah.
That happened to you too?
If you called me and you said, I know you have a muzzleloader tag. I was scouting in this unit yesterday, and there's elk here. I'm in. But the 2-week ordeal, scouting up and down for days and days and days, totally get it, appreciate it, love to go occasionally, but it's not my deal. But that's the great thing about hunting, is there's a huge variety.
Right. There is a huge
And
variety.
until you go out and experience it. So until you go out and you hear the sound of the wind going over ducks' ears or ducks' wings as they come into you 45 minutes before or after sunrise, you don't understand.
Right. And it's or unless you hear a turkey gobble or an elk bugle, or two bulls fighting or 2 bucks
Heck yeah.
fighting. I mean, those are until you're in that, until you experience that for the first time, then it's.
But even just being out in nature, I mean, I take my wife sometimes will come out on a hunt with us and just be hiking. A lot of times she has the camera and she just takes shots, and she absolutely loves it. Just being out in nature and just the quietness, and it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you guys go deep. That's I'm sure you guys are way off the campground grid when you go out into the woods to do things. I mean, that's the thing I see about your hunt that makes me envious, is that you pack into areas where there are not people, because that's where the animals are. And
Sometimes, not always, but you're still gonna, like, even if you're at a campground, you're still gonna be potentially hiking into where It depends.
I'm talking about campground, like state campground. When I say
There's spots where we deer hunt where we're literally there's just a small campground right off the side of a main highway.
Oh.
And then you're driving to a spot, to a trailhead, and then you're heading in from there.
Right.
There's definitely different styles for sure. There are some serious backcountry hunters that literally like pack 4 to 8 miles in, set up camp, and then they hunt from there.
And that's primarily what
That's rad.
we primarily do, the backcountry hunts where we're 4 to 7 miles in.
Usually on
And-
public land, right?
Yeah, public land, 4 to 7 miles in, and we're back there for, 7 to 10 days. And we've done several hunts, New Mexico, Washington, Idaho, Alaska. I make it to Alaska just about every year, and I used to guide fishing up there for a few years, and so we go up and do Sitka blacktail and reindeer hunts up in Alaska. But yeah.
I liked your answer, and I can appreciate that because he came in later in life. I like that. Drew, same question for you then. So where in your timeline did hunting kick off?
I grew up in a family that was huge on fishing. Ever since I can remember walking, we fished. My grandparents owned property in Lincoln City. Fishing was just a way of life. Grew up catching salmon, steelhead, trout as a little kid. But believe it or not, I was the first person in my immediate family to actually start hunting. And I was probably like 16, 17 years old. And kind of me and my best friend got a passion for deer hunting, went out, and first day I'd ever went out deer hunting, I was packing a 30-06 rifle. I shot a spike buck. And had no idea what to do with it from there. And I'd cut fish up my whole life. So, we rolled it over thinking, how hard could it be? And I sunk my knife blade in to the stomach of that deer.
Oh, no.
And,
Oh, boy.
yeah, I was puking. My buddy was puking. And we finally, it took us a while. We got that deer gutted and skinned. And it was definitely a learning curve. But from there, I just got really into hunting. I hunted deer I rifle hunted for deer and elk for a number of years. I'd mentioned I went to Kodiak, Alaska on a guided fishing. When I was in Kodiak, I got really big into hunting, and I did a little bit of bird hunting when I was just out of high school. But one of our clients in Kodiak was from North Carolina and started talking about hound hunting. And when I came home from Kodiak, Alaska, I got really big into hound hunting. It was something that really piqued my interest. And so for a number of years, I hunted bears. We hunted bear, cougar, bobcat, raccoon with hounds. I hunted with a bunch of guys where we worked for the state of Washington on damage permits, where we went and took bears out of certain areas where they're damaging trees for Weyerhaeuser. And
Can you just explain what hound hunting is for the people that are listening?
hound hunting is where you're pursuing. In our case, primarily we were pursuing big game with hound dogs. So there's lots of different species of hounds, but essentially you're using and training hounds to tree and catch big game. We had cougar permits that we drew that we caught cougars on, and it's funny. Hound hunting is one of those real heavy. It's a real controversial subject even amongst hunters, because some people agree with it and some people don't agree with it. Some people think it's kind of cheating because you're using dogs, but the reality is if most people knew how much time and effort you have to put into training those dogs from month-old puppies to the point where they actually could be successful and catch game, it's a heck of a lot of work. And it's a lot of work. Bear hunting is exhausting.
Right.
And with hounds, but really exciting and exhilarating at the same time. But anyhow, so I got into that, and for me, I fell out of bird hunting. I had friends that continued to want to bird hunt, and it didn't really pique my interest because I felt like I was always trying to chase something that was more exciting or something that was getting my adrenaline going a little bit more. And so from rifle hunting, I got into archery hunting, and now we're bugling with bulls at 10 yards, and they're screaming right in your face, and you've got a bow and arrow as opposed to a rifle.
Have you ever heard a bull bugle
No.
in real life?
You know, and
You have to do it. You have to go hear one scream.
It's incredible.
Really?
you know,
Can,
and then
you bring one up?
Yeah.
yeah, pull up the elk bugling. And then from there I got into hound hunting, and you got cougars in a tree 10 feet above you, or you got bears on the ground, and the bear won't climb a tree, and it's sitting there fighting your dogs, and you've got to handle that situation, or or rattling a buck with antlers.
Watch this.
Right after the commercial.
It's so I was just looking for the next thing.
18,000 views.
Goddamn it, right.
So if you're archery hunting, you're what, 40, 50 yards away from this bull coming in?
Yeah, in this video, I don't know, potentially, but to effectively shoot and kill an elk, for myself, there's some people that can reach way out there, but I wouldn't feel confident taking more than a 50 or 60 yard shot on a bull.
And this bull's either coming in to fight, most likely he's coming in to fight another bull off of his harem of cows, right?
Or if you're making cow sounds, he's coming in because he thinks you're a cow in heat and he's coming to breed.
Yeah.
Really?
But so you're calling those animals, the ability to call those animals in, and
Look at this. This guy's
Yeah,
guy's
that
at
one.
2
It's
yards.
terrifying.
right,
It's terrifying when you're right.
it's exciting.
Yeah.
And last year, my buddy Tyler and I are in a lot of the guys I hunt with.
That's a cow call.
That's a
There
person
he
making
comes.
a cow
He's
call.
coming in, right?
Yeah.
Holy
Holy
cow.
shit, this is...
Now, mind you, this thing will absolutely destroy you.
Oh, snap. Yeah, whoa. This thing looks like it's going to kill him.
God, why is he so close? Does he have one of those mirror blinds? It's a big mirror.
The guy's talking. That elk's probably never seen a person before.
Yeah, it's like,
He's still standing
what
there.
is going on here?
But
He was too close.
That was too close. That was awesome. That was too close. That was too close.
That was too close.
Because he get gored by that thing, right?
The look on your face was so awesome. You're like,
It was like snap. That thing looks like pissed or not happy.
It's an adventure. Going
Yeah.
hunting is an adventure. You don't have to go spend lots of money and go long distances to do it, but it's an adventure. It's a break from the 9-to-5 grind, and not everybody wants to hunt, which is fine. Totally respect that, but it's changed who I am. Definitely, and
Well-
we didn't talk about work-life balance, but do a day out in the field or day up at Lake Merrill.
oh yeah,
I've taken Ben up to Lake Merrill and
me.
and Drew, and we should maybe the three of us go this fall, because if you go in September, the fishing can be dynamite. There's nobody up there
Yeah.
in the evening, but you can hear the elk
You
bugling.
hear elk bugling.
We should go camping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No question.
The one thing though, the biggest benefit, I love hunting, not because I like to kill animals. That's not why I like to hunt.
is he close enough for that?
Not because I love to kill animals, and not just for the meat, but that's a perk. The meat is a definite perk. My freezers are typically always full of wild game. I honestly couldn't tell you the last time I went to the store and purchased meat to like cook into steaks or anything like that. So that's a huge perk of it. But really, it's the sport of it, and you're out in the outdoors, fresh air, you're hiking, you're typically having really good time and making memories with friends, and it's always a challenge.
People are mistaken about the success rate. Like in Washington, it's like 10%
Oh,
for
less.
elk hunters.
Yeah.
It's less than
We asked
10%.
Roger, who is probably the most successful hunter I've ever met. What do you think his success rate is?
I wouldn't even know where to start.
He said 20%.
Really?
Which is still a really good statistic. But if you think that of all the animals in here, he only had a 20% success rate, think about how much time it took.
So if there's
Right.
200 animals in here, how many trips was that?
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, talking about regulations, right? Hunting you just don't jump in your pickup with a rifle and go shoot a doe in the head. It's not like people think,
Right.
right? So let's say you want a duck hunt this year, okay? Well, you got to take a hunter safety course.
Really?
Yep.
To get to get your tags?
Yeah. When were you born?
74.
Ooh, what's the cutoff? Look it up.
Jesus Christ.
What's the cutoff?
Not positive, but honestly,
Am I on a silver pass or something? Is that what it is?
yeah. But even if you have your AARP card, that's fine. No, that's fine. But
I think it's 72.
A lot of people don't know, but Ben and I share the same birthday.
Yeah,
And
March
you would,
23rd.
and most people would think he's younger than me,
Same age, maybe. Close.
which he is.
10 years difference exactly. 84, 74.
You're younger than me?
yeah, I wouldn't have thought you were born in '74.
I appreciate that. But
Not
now
at
that
all.
you know, so
I
let's-
would
Now
have
that you
said
pulled the
six.
AARP
yeah.
card.
The
I was thinking
AARP
like
card.
64.
So, Dad, can you take me to ice cream when we're
Not
done?
even a problem.
What he was
I'm
trying to
kidding.
get
I
into
know.
is they do
Hold
have
on,
disabled
let me-
they do
no,
have disabled
listen,
hunter
what's that?
permits.
You should have taken.
Disabled hunters permit.
I told you last year take your hunter safety course because you could do it online.
Well, and
You can't do that anymore, so you have to go in the class. And I did it when I was 24.
I do think he makes the cut though.
I think
I don't
you-
think he has to
but
go. He has to,
it is
you know,
still smart to take the hunter safety
I
course.
would think so. I would rather take a
and,
hunter safety
and go through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. You just might be with a bunch of 10-year-olds,
right.
which is when I went. I mean,
So my son's 7, so if you don't get around to this for a few years, you can pick him up from my house and you guys can go to
That
hunter
sounds
safety
great.
class
You
together.
should- That's really, really super good.
We're not going to let Ben go a few years. He's got to get. He's got to. We're going hunting. We're going hunting next year.
you need to, like, tomorrow, sign up for the hunter safety course because it's not something you can do the day before you buy your hunting license, okay? Because it might be a month. It might be like a 4-class deal.
Right.
The cool thing, we could even, well, and it's so easy to go
Just
to.
look it up.
No, it's so easy to go to the Ridgefield Wildlife Refuge. We're really lucky to have the access to hunting around here that we do that's so close. But like my parents have a pond at their house that my dad lets me hunt ducks and geese when they're in season, obviously. But I'm able to take, so Cody actually, I've hunted big game since late teens. And then my son's 7. Cody introduced me to duck hunting 2 years ago. This will be my 3rd season. And so now I've brought my little boy.
Ooh, sorry.
Did he just miss it?
I was
75.
right. I was right.
It's 72.
72. You have to take it.
I have to take it?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So, but now it's become a thing where there was
I'm too young.
You're
That's
too
really,
young.
really great. Yeah. So suck on that, fellas.
Finally. So, but now it's become a thing where it's something that I can share with my little boy.
Right.
Because he can't go to elk camp. He can't come to deer camp. Like, he can't hike those miles. He's too little.
Yeah.
But I can take him out for whether it's 30 minutes or 5 hours in a duck blind, and he enjoys himself, and I get to spend quality time with him.
Yeah.
So it's a family thing. And then just getting your kids away from, playing on the iPad all day long, so getting them outside and doing active things
And
with
that
them.
quality time, I mean, you're dealing with extremely dangerous things. So the responsibility, and when I was with Pheasants Forever, we would our focus was youth hunters, and so we would take kids out. So there's no age minimum for hunting, right? You can be as young as you want to hunt as long as you can pass hunter safety.
Which is typically 7 or 8.
7 or 8, as long as you can shoot a gun and the
the
instructors
earliest.
feel you're safe enough to hunt. So we would take kids as young as 7, 8 out pheasant hunting, and the cutoff for the youth hunt was 15. I think if you're over 15, you didn't qualify for the youth hunt anymore, which doesn't make sense. But so I would see kids out, maybe a single mom or parents that don't hunt, and we would take them out and get them excited about bird hunting. And then they would come back year after year after year, and all of a sudden they're 17, 18 years old. They got their pickup with their hunting dog and their shotgun, and after school they're out at the lake, at Vancouver Lake pheasant hunting. And that's a huge amount of responsibility for a teenager to have, right? And so think about how that person's experience going into their career and school and everything's going to be.
I think about it as like, what I'm missing out on is like the intrinsic value there is in being able to hunt down your own food. Realistically, like, so, whatever brought you guys around to hunting and wherever you are in your life, like, My life course has had it so I just have not had access to a father who would take me out or the family members that would take me out. And I grew up in Clatskanie, Oregon,
Which is weird.
which is weird, exactly. In September, October, November, whatever.
It's weird that you still have all your teeth.
You know what? I don't.
Are you gonna pull your 2 front teeth?
Yeah, I'm gonna rip them out. This is a bridge, but it's,
I was born in Juneau, Alaska.
Okay.
And I like to fish. I basically know nothing about fishing. So it's common.
It can happen. It's not. Let's just say like the gun racks, and this is obviously way pre 9/11, but gun racks were a regular occurrence in the high school parking lot. Kids would be missing school left and right, to go out there and hunt. But I have not had the opportunity to go out there. I did go once, hunting, and I'm not going to go into that story here because it was it's offensive.
Did you
to deer,
cry?
It's offensive to hunters. It's offensive to anybody who. No.
Did you shoot a deer? Did you shoot a
I
doe?
wish. Actually, it was it
Deliverance.
was bad. Yeah, no, Deliverance was a better
You got a
story
pretty
than
mouth.
me. Just closing my eyes and just unloading a rifle into the
So it was
area where deer were. In a semi-auto, and then my friend having to take down that doe. But I'll tell you about this. Shush it. And it was within season. It's all good. So
In doe season.
right.
What unit was that?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
the truth is, when it comes down to it, what thing I always wanted, what a thing that I would really value is that would I be able to manage survival where the grocery stores don't have fresh meat waiting in a cooler, where coolers don't work because there's no power, where something occurs like that? Would I be able to go out? I mean, I have the guns for it. I've chosen to purchase a 12 gauge, so that I could go in pump action, so that I could pull things right up out of the air like that. I have 357 long barrel, revolver, that you can hunt with that if it comes right on down to it. It's not a hunting rifle, but it's got a multi-use. And then I have my 22 varmint rifle, and I'm like, these things were selected carefully so that they would be for their utility. But would I know what to do? Would I know where to shoot? Would I know how to field dress? That's the thing, and that is different because you can ruin all of your meat.
But Ben and his wife, though, I think Ben would really like to get into it. I think your wife would like it as well. But
I agree.
they,
She had fun.
yeah, they came over for dinner that one night, and we had a deer hanging in my shop.
God, that was good.
And she was super excited. They went because she got to go down there, and we let her. She grabbed a knife and cut the tenderloins out of the deer.
Oh, nice.
And we ended up cutting up the
Awesome.
tenderloins.
Yeah.
Olive oil,
And
salt, and
we were
pepper.
cooking the tenderloins that night for dinner, and she thought that was the coolest thing ever because she was really into the idea that it wasn't there was no hormones, it wasn't farm raised. It
Was it
wi-
miserable?
Yeah, it was wild,
Yeah,
organic.
exactly.
It died a clean death. That was really important to her. But I think she'd be really into it, and you'd get to eat red meat.
Well, and
Regularly.
Regularly.
God damn.
non
So you're gonna have
non-factory
to
farm.
learn how to hunt from a survival standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, and,
you're saying.
Carissa, my wife, does not like to hunt or fish. She likes to crab. She doesn't like to hunt or fish, but she totally supports me. She loves eating the meat, loves doing all that, but she's just not into it, so that's okay too. So let's get back to these regulations since we're talking about regulations in your industry and my industry. Okay, so you want to go duck hunting. Gotta take a hunter safety course. You have to have a small game license, I believe.
Migratory bird license.
You have to
Yeah.
have a migratory bird. I'm counting here, so there's 3. You have to have a migratory bird license,
Federal bird stamp.
federal duck stamp.
Federal duck stamp.
If you want to hunt geese, you have to have a goose identification card on the west side of Washington.
Which is
Excuse me, what's it-
you have to take a test, and it's not easy.
It's a very difficult test.
Goose identity. How many times have you been goose?
Oh, so you basically they're keeping you from just shooting crane,
No,
right?
no. There's
There's different types of
Canadian
geese.
There's like
Oh, so
7
to know your goose.
subspecies.
Yeah,
So,
there's literally subspecies of Canadian geese, and you can only shoot a certain number of that type.
Really,
Google it. There's a good image. It shows all 7 side by side.
and you have to be able to pull this business out of
In
Yeah.
the moment,
Yeah.
in the moment.
right? If you shoot too many duskies,
On
One.
like say like on like the sun is like we're talking about sunrise.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Like and mist and distance.
Yeah, and
And you've been
adrenaline.
drinking,
yeah.
and so, like,
No,
yeah, all
well,
this stuff
we
going
haven't
on.
been, drinking.
No, I was joking. Drinking coffee is what I said.
So,
Yeah.
Really?
Scroll
Well,
down.
hold on one
There's one where they
second.
have 7 of them laid out.
Yeah, I know exactly. I have the one you're talking about saved on my cell phone.
And so you have to have.
Well, like here's 3 different ones right
yeah,
here.
that's a good one.
Dusky, Taverners, and Cackling.
Okay.
So you would look at those and go, oh, there's 3 geese laying there. They're all different kinds of geese.
And not only that, but you don't need a test for this, but the limit for ducks is 6, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the limit.
There's 5 different.
Right here.
Yeah.
That's 5 different geese? I thought there was like different ages.
And this is the hard part.
No.
They're flying.
Those are different.
Right, that's what I'm
species.
They're flying 50 to 80 yards above you, and you're trying to select what's what.
Right.
So it's not like you just grab your shotgun and go out hunting. I mean,
No.
and then there's the gear and everything that's involved, which is why last year I was just trying to get you to come out as a
Spotter. Just kinda
what do you call it? Not a guest, but a
Moron.
viewer.
Viewer. Dead weight.
Just to kind of see, because it's not like, and that's what sucks. For fishing, they have that one day a year where no license is required. I wish they would do that for hunting, where you could, because just to buy those 5 licenses, you're well over $200.
Yeah, it's expensive, and
Okay.
to hunt pheasants here on.
But that's a big investment, not counting the ammo, guns, waiter, decoys, camo.
It's
Honestly.
unfortunate because it's slowly becoming a rich man's sport.
Yes.
Where years ago, I mean, there was a lot of families that relied on hunting season and being able to affordably buy their tags to put meat in the freezer.
Mhm.
Which is
and-
what it should be about, I think.
right.
frankly.
And sadly, it's kind of it's definitely becoming a rich man's sport.
It's become a higher end recreation or
Correct.
whatever for whatever.
Well, and
Well, and if we're not careful, it's going to become even more expensive because we're going to lose our private land.
the
Right.
exclusivity of it.
And then you're going to be paying to hunt on somebody else's land.
Well, for example, these last few years, I've hunted on Weyerhaeuser land for over the last 10 years. 3 years ago, Weyerhaeuser started charging a permit. The first year I think it was $50. Second year it was $150.
Jeez.
Third year it was $160, and now it's over $300.
And that's just to access their land.
That's
It's just for a key.
To hunt
That's
during
just
that
to
year.
get through the gate, and then you're still not guaranteed anything. So, like, one of the things I was telling one of my hunting partners, I said there's 4 of us in the group. I was like, well, we've always wanted to go somewhere different because the reason we hunt that is because we know the area really well. Why don't we pool our $1,200, buy some beef, some organic beef, put it in the freezer, go hunt a new spot, and then if we're not successful, we're going to come home to a bunch of organic beef.
Right.
And if we are successful, awesome. It didn't cost us $1,200 to hunt that land.
Yeah.
God.
So for anybody that's listening, that if you're still listening,
Oh, well, of course they're hanging on every word.
well, there's 3 really good hunting channels: Outdoor Network,
Sportsmen.
Sportsman's, and the Pursuit channel. And to be honest, I don't like most of the hunting shows on there because it's just kill, 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 kill. That's all. You just see all the kill shots, right? Well, there's one guy out there that's become a huge celebrity in the hunting community. His name's-
There's multiple.
There's multiple, but the guy that I would recommend, somebody that's not an avid hunter that's interested, is to watch the show Meat Eater, which is available on Netflix.
Correct.
It's Steven Ranella, and it's the most accurate, true-to-life hunting show there is. I would say 1 out of 3 shows he harvests his animal.
Him, Randy Newberg,
He's kind of created
Solo
a whole
Hunter.
new... Yeah.
There's a handful of them that are just they're like everyday public land hunters, such as ourselves, where they don't have access to, thousands of acres of private land, and all the animals are there.
And it's real, and kind of how our conversation's been is kind of how they describe hunting, and it's And for people that think hunting's a political issue, I think Stephen Ranella said it best. He goes, the liberals are trying to take our hunting rights and gun rights away, and the conservatives are trying to take our public land away. So it's not a groupthink, party-affiliated issue. And I think that the politicians hijack it, and it divides the community, and it keeps people from being interested in hunting. Yeah, Stephen Ranella, Meat Eater. He's got a great podcast.
The Meat Eater
The
podcast.
Meat Eater podcast, and he's got a great website. And it's available on Netflix now, which is the first hunting show ever on Netflix.
Yeah, there's a couple others, but yeah, it's
The Meat Eater.
Meat Eater. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got a great book I'll let you borrow when you do start hunting. That
It's pretty cool. He harvests. I mean, he's not. If he has an opportunity to kill a really big animal, that's a trophy animal, then he does, obviously. But but a lot of his shows is really about it's more about harvesting the meat and the hunt. And then he usually has somewhere in his show he's cooking that meat over a fire and showing you how to season it with gunpowder or
I'm serious. That's what I want to do.
He's got a new recipe. Almost every show he's showing you some kind of recipe on how he's cooking that game, and whether it's over an open fire in the middle of the desert or in a kitchen, he's showing all kinds of different things on how he's cooking bear meat or pronghorn or whatever he might be.
just don't follow that one recipe where he gets trichinosis from bear meat.
Oh,
Right.
the
Yeah.
worm.
Yeah.
And worm from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Just with the Hep C from that goat. I just want you to make sure don't get that one.
But I would get up tomorrow morning before you work, and I'd go to the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife website and figure out how to take your hunter safety course.
Here's the thing that I'm grateful for. When I was living in Portland, we lived there for a number of years, and it had its own appeals before now. There were a lot of different priorities. Moving back and I say back because I grew up in Klatskanai, Oregon. You know what I mean? And the whole time I was in the Coast Guard, I was in Astoria, so we're not far off from each other. We're all in the coastal range. Like, coming back, when I moved to Vancouver.
no, you're all right.
And I moved to Clark County, it felt like I was around people where I know that when the shit hit the road, the rotary oscillator, I'm surrounded by people who I can actually learn from, and the relationships that I've made here, if it all hits the fan, you cats are going to take care of us. You know what I mean? There are people who have tangible skills that for survival that over the river they don't have. And no offense to the kids over in Portland listening, if there's anybody, but honestly, I like that about this area. There is something I do really truly value, going out and getting your own food. Mm-hmm. I really do. I'm not talking about earning the money to be able to go out there and buy half an organic cow. As much as that would be great to be able to do that, not everybody has those resources. I really, really do value fishing and doing that. That is something about the Pacific Northwest that we're really lucky to have
Year round.
year around.
So next July, I want to have you guys back on the podcast, and I want to ask you the same questions again after you've experienced some form of hunting.
After my breakdown, because that's what's going to happen between now and July.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't have it.
I have a Coast Guard question for you.
We'll bring your caregiver with you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Do you care, real quick? I'm sorry.
Go.
Before we leave hunting, I'm curious. Going around the table, what's the best wild game you've ever had?
Start with Ryan.
Elk.
Elk.
Yeah. Why?
It's good. It's just good.
Yeah.
I don't like I'm not a big fish fan.
Yeah.
That just now there are some fish, depending on how it's cooked, I enjoy it, but it's not like I'll go to the store and I'll pick a nice steak over fish any day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get some gamey meat no matter what animal it is, but elk, I like elk.
Right on.
What do you think, Cody?
Especially that deer you killed where you stabbed him in the gut. That probably was really good meat. That's a hard question to answer. I mean, we live in the salmon capital of the world. And to be able to catch a spring salmon with a 1/4 inch of fat on it, there's something special about that.
That's true.
And I think there's also something special about eating a rainbow trout for breakfast, beer battered rainbow trout and a Budweiser for breakfast at camp. There's something special about that. But really, if I had to pick my desert island, it'd probably be grouse.
Grouse? Grouse is good. Do you have what's the extent of your wild game been? You had deer at my house.
At deer at your house?
Sheep had.
Okay, so I was out at Devil's. There we go. I'm gonna man up. Here we go. So I was out there at Devil's Lake, and my buddy pulled out trout, and so we just jammed lemon on it and dill, and
This is Devil's
Clean
Lake,
it.
like Lincoln City.
yeah, and to foil those and cook those over the grill, that was made me think like, what am I doing eating anything from a store? I mean,
Yeah.
it was the most. First off, some of that freshwater fish can like just stay fishy in no time at all. But you know what I mean, to pull it right up out of the water, and he cleaned it in a red hot second. Like we threw it on there, and it was amazing. And I was like, this is the best thing I've ever had over a campfire in my whole life. Skillet, foil, the whole nine. And so I've been nuts for that. But like the tenderloin, like you'd said, you know, where there was just hanging at the temperature of the garage, you know, at the shop that you had. It was cold, you know, and they pull that off and they cut it into these little medallions and drop it into the skillet with olive oil, salt, and pepper, nothing else. The game was a seasoning that you could never replicate. There's nothing about it. There's something live about that flavor. You know what I mean? I'll never forget that. I can taste it in my mouth right now.
Yeah.
You could have that every day.
Oh, I could easily have that every day and talk about live for 100 years.
Yeah.
You know,
That in that particular deer.
compared to what you eat now, you know what I mean? Like I got the pizza that's over on that table over there, you know, compared to the meat that's on that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love when people are like, I don't know how you could kill an animal, blah, 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 and eat that meat. You're a savage, and they're eating a pepperoni pizza.
Yeah, I know that.
Where do you think,
Yeah,
I think that pepperoni
like-
came from?
They're
Yeah,
like, how-
this
that
animal
pig
needs to
was
get to
not-
rut, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, they ask you, how could you kill that deer? It's like, well, I pulled the trigger.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's easy, you just don't lead him as much, right?
Idiot.
For
Is that what
me, and answer my own question I asked for everybody, but deer is hands down probably. For some reason I like deer so much better than elk. I like elk, you know, I like moose,
Never heard anybody say that.
but for some reason for me I love the taste of deer, and I like mule deer, I like whitetail, I like blacktail, hands down Sitka blacktail, which is usually southeastern Alaska is my favorite of all
What's
deer.
so good about it? Can you describe what's different about it?
Well, their diet's different.
Their diet's different. Really, they're a shorter deer. They're kind of a fatter deer because of the hard winters they have. They tend to
You
put
can
up-
see one right over there.
Yeah, there's a
It's the
sick-
smaller deer.
Yeah, there's a couple of Sitka deer up there, but they have a lot more.
can see it
They
straight
they
across.
tend to put on a lot more fat, getting ready for a harder winter than
Like
what we
marbled.
typically have. But I don't know, just the flavor of the meat is really good. The meat tends to be a real darker red than you typically see down here with like our local blacktail, or if you go a little east into some of the mule deer or bench leg deer that we have. But hands down, I'd say cougar meat or mountain lion meat is by far the best wild game I've ever
God, I
had.
want some.
I've
Let's
never
have it.
eaten a cat before.
Yeah. Let's go somewhere where we
Do
can
you,
hound hunt cougars.
Do you eat the tongue on your
I
deer?
have had. I don't regularly harvest tongue, but we have over the years. We've had caribou and elk and deer tongue. And you know the thing about tongue, like any organ, honestly, I almost prefer the heart over the back strap on any animal. I'm not a big liver fan, but I've had a lot of liver. But we usually, when I worked in Alaska, we would have what was called organ night, and we would have like 6 or 7 deer or caribou hearts, and that many livers. We soak them in salt water for a couple of days and
leach
cut
them.
those up. And I think heart is better than probably any part of the whole animal. I think for any animal that I've had, but tongue has, in my experience, in the way that we've prepared it, maybe we've done it wrong, but tongue has really, really good flavor, but the texture is hard to get over. Was for me, but
So on the Meat Eater show on Netflix,
A lot of organ meat.
well, there's a 2-part Idaho mule deer hunt. That's one of my favorite 2 episodes. It's awesome. But his partner that's hunting with him, Ryan, gets a deer the first night, meets him back at camp, and he had to leave the deer there because he was way away, and he literally just brought the tongue back, and so they just boiled it and then put some seasoning on it, and they were just sitting there talking about how many hunters leave the tongue, and they were like, man, I want to get another deer just to have another tongue. Like,
Really?
Yeah. So watching his episodes, he really goes into depth about everything. He's such a
Purist is what he sounds like.
He's so knowledgeable. He's written multiple books. I mean, he's a great ambassador for hunting.
You want to
and
hear
for the
somebody
sport.
defend hunting? He's got this, I think it's on YouTube, where he's in a bookstore with his book, and there's some just anti-hunter in there,
Come on, dude.
and he just very eloquently shuts him down.
Some anti-hunter. Oh shit.
No.
Very
Well, that's good that
elegantly
he can
just-
do it without.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. It's not like he's
Right.
being a jerk, and the guy just has no response, and it's so easy to shut down hunting in your mind from an emotional standpoint because
Right.
it's an emotional
Without
thing.
detail or fact, yeah.
And that's the thing. Most anti-hunters are come at it from a complete emotional. It's a complete emotional standpoint, and a lot of people that aren't pro hunting don't understand the benefits of hunting and where the money goes for the people that spend their money on hunting, because all that a large majority of the money that goes into hunting and applying for permits goes into conservation and
Which is what this place is about, correct,
Even the ammo, you
Mr.
buy.
Wendell?
I mean, everything. Yeah.
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 Here it is if you want to listen to it real quickly.
Yeah.
You write anything on your
We might
computer,
get, it's only
you
a
need
minute.
to
We
get
might get
Grammarly.
kicked off.
I write pretty much
Which would be
all
awesome.
day.
Was that me right there? Was it the guy?
Go ahead, sir.
Stephen, don't you think these animals you've killed want to live as much as you or I do? In fact, isn't this just a rationalization for murdering innocent creatures? To shoot innocent animals, animals that have beating hearts that run from you simply because they want to live. They're not armed with copper bullets or lead bullets.
I think you're not really asking a question, you're making a point, but I'm going to answer like a question. I would say that if you look at the grand spectrum of species on this planet, you treat humans like a species, we're one. You'll not find many that don't prey on other kinds. People say generally, behaviorally and anatomically modern humans have been around for maybe 75,000 years. On this continent alone, people hunted for 15,000 years, notwithstanding the last couple hundred years. So to not hunt is in some way historically off the mark.
Yeah.
To not hunt is a fairly new experiment in a human sense. To ask a wolf not to hunt anymore is an impossible question, So if someone comes to me and says that they don't want human hunting, we don't want to hunt, I kind of am like, coming from what perspective?
The life is sacred.
Yeah, I know that life is sacred, but I think that what I admire is not, I admire the deer, but I admire the idea of deer more than the individual deer. And I can assure you that I know more about deer than you ever will. And I've learned that through hunting for them. And I probably care about them in a way that's deeper than something you're going to experience from having a removed perspective on it. But beyond that, I can't really say that much because like all predatory animals with canine teeth, we eat meat. And if you're going to eat it, if you're going to agree that some people can eat it and do eat it, I don't think you can fairly point out a hunter and say that he's the vicious one because he chose to go out and harvest it himself, and that the other people who just have other perspective on it or let it go on outside of their view are A-okay. I think it's ridiculous. But like I said, I don't think you're really asking the question. I understand what you're saying, and
No, I wanted your answer. I want to thank you. And if you'll read my
Well, and
pamphlet
what
on
he says,
veganism, I'll read
that
your
it's
book.
the idea of
Really?
deer, it's not the
How long is your
individual
pamphlet?
deer.
Idea of deer.
Roger answered that question really well in episode number 4 of our podcast. Is he said, you can't keep animals from dying. You can't keep a deer from dying. That deer is going to die. We as humans are going to die, right?
Yeah.
But what you can protect is their habitat. And as hunters and as animal conservation people, that's what we do. We protect the habitat. Go to England and book a public land hunt.
We spend the money.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the reality is too is a lot of people, most people that are against hunting, they think like we would if you and I were out in a field hanging out with a bunch of chicks and you get shot. I'm going to be really upset. and so are the chicks, right? And a lot of people try to put that, like they try to compare human life to animal life from that perspective. And I can tell you firsthand, I mean, I think unless you're dealing with maybe chimpanzees or some advanced
Primate.
form of primate, animals don't have that perspective on life. I mean, I've shot deer and had the other deer watch that deer lay down and die and go right back to eating.
So it's not a moral
In
imperative.
several
yeah.
things. So it doesn't have the emotional impact on the animal that that a lot of people think that it does, and that's that's their biggest hang up, and the biggest thing a lot of people can't get over. It's like, how could you murder animals when they're just trying to live their life? They don't understand that animals don't have the psychological or emotional understanding of life and death.
And-
They have the fight or flight instinct, but they don't have the
complicated.
emotional understanding of life and death
Survival.
like we do.
And
upsetting
the
about the
image that a lot
grass.
of people have of hunters, of that redneck Billy Bob that goes out and poaches, those people do exist. And nobody hates those people more than ethical
Then,
hunters.
yeah, correct. Then
Right.
law-abiding.
And the percentage of those people are half of 1% of the hunting community.
Yeah, wasteful people.
Yeah.
yeah.
I had another great point that I was going to try to wrap this on. What a great podcast. Business, personal development, hunting.
32 gigs of memory.
Yeah.
It's been good. But no, seriously, let's have it.
Exactly.
Oh, I was going to say Puget Sound spotted prawns is another great. Have you guys ever shrimped for Puget Sound? We'll do it next spring. We just missed it. You can eat them fresh.
Any
right away.
chance to go to Puget Sound, though? Really,
Let's
honestly,
do
or
it.
the Hood River and go up to the.
We started
Hood
this.
Canal.
We started this. We started this podcast on a toast. Let's end it on a toast. To good friends, future
Good
hunting
friends.
buddies, Ryan.
Come on, Ryan.
All right.
Right?
Thank you for coming on. I don't know if this lived up to your expectation.
I hope it lived up to your expectations.
Yeah, I don't know
because
what to
you got
expect.
like a deep dive into long-term care, which can be a
Well,
kind
I'll
of
tell
a
you what.
gray and weird, saddening.
We'll see how many views it gets.
It's going to get a lot. There's a lot of similarities between what your industry and our industry, but there's a lot of similarities between your industry and every industry.
Right.
These are struggles and management styles and techniques that people struggle with every day. And I really appreciated your answer about personal development, right? But I guarantee you the things you said, there's going to be somebody that's listening to this in their industry in the background while they're working, and they're going to take something out of what you said on this podcast, and they're going to apply it to what they're doing.
Thanks, pal.
And I think that's the whole purpose of this podcast. So, all right, on that note,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you,
guys.
everybody. We'll see you next time.